Hey there, today we're doing our hip lab. So there's your handout that's posted up on Canvas. We'll start off with some manual muscle testing, and then we'll talk a little bit about protection and the hip wrap. There's a lot of material in here that we won't necessarily go over. This is mainly the stuff that you'll be tested on for your lab final. So first off, we'll talk about hip flexion. So a hip flexor flexes the hip, brings the hip closer towards the waistline. So we have two muscles that cross the hip, primarily the rectus femoris, which is part of the quadriceps muscles, attaches at the ASIS and then blends in with the other quadriceps and attaches at the quadriceps tendon. The other one is your iliopsoas, which starts deep in your lumbar spine and then comes forward of the hip, and it only crosses one joint. It only crosses the hip joint, whereas the rectus femoris crosses the knee and the hip. So we can test those in two different ways. We keep the knee straight, and we're going to focus on the rectus femoris. So the way we're going to test this is have them come up about this far. You want to stabilize their pelvis by reaching across and then push down. Just like that. And then to test the iliopsoas, we bring them up into hip flexion here. They're going to be more stable because the weight is over the pelvis and not out away from the pelvis. And on this, I want to make sure I line my forearm up with the shin, and now I'm pushing down here. And then of course, just like any of our other tests, you want to do both sides so that you can compare to make sure one side's not stronger than the other. And now let me have you lay on your left side. And so what we're going to do on this one is we're going to test the gluteus medius, which is one of the hip abductors. So again, abduction is moving the hip away from midline. So you don't want to bring them way up. So just about here, you want the hip forward. You want a straight line from the shoulder through the hip to the ankle. You want to stabilize at the pelvis, and then you're pushing down just on the shin. Here, and then you'd have them roll over and do the other side. And then let's check hip flexion or hip extension now. So on this one, again, just like hip flexion with hip extension, you have two muscles to test. One crosses the knee joint, the other one only crosses the hip joint. So the hamstrings attach to the pelvis and then cross the knee. They're primarily a knee flexor, but with the knee straight, they're also a hip extensor. So we raise up, again, we want to stabilize the pelvis, make sure that they're not allowing them to raise their hip up, and then you're going to push down. So that's going to test a little bit of the gluteus max, but it's also going to get some of the hamstrings. So to take the hamstrings out of it and just focus on the gluteus max, you would be here, bend the knee, extend the hip, and then have them hold, and then don't let me push down. Okay, so those are our manual muscle testing for this lab. So we'll do hip flexion, hip abduction, and hip extension. So hip extension and hip flexion we're doing in two different positions. And then real quickly, there's a video already on my YouTube, and I've already posted it on Canvas for the hip flexor wrap. So make sure that you're watching that. I know that we briefly went over that one day in lab, but make sure you're looking over that, as that's another one of the skills you want to be ready for on the lab final. That's it. Have a great day. Bye.